Hey everyone, Jeremy Vaeni here, doing what I didn't think I'd do. Yet another Michael Jackson Leaving Neverland video. But this one has a real purpose, I promise. Not that the others didn't. By the way, let's get this out of the way. I look like a pedo, maybe a member of NAMBLA. I'm a moron, I'm a numbnut. I haven't watched the video, how can I judge? What other stupid things do people say? How dare I make fun of Fox News, I guess. Oh, and I'm fat, that's the other thing. So, with all those out of the way, all you trolls, I'm saving you some time in the comments section. Isn't it interesting, if you go and you look at, and why would you, all the comments for the 4 videos, I erased some because they're just redundant. He looks like a pedo, he looks like a... If you look at like what the Michael Jackson fans are saying and what the anti-Michael Jackson people are saying, like I think if you were to just like break it down mathematically, like the Michael Jackson fans, on the whole, are giving a lot of great evidence as to why they should be able to remain Michael Jackson fans because Michael didn't do it. And on the whole, the anti-Michael Jackson fans aren't giving any evidence at all and in fact are just being insulting. And they're the people who believe they have the moral higher ground. So I find that interesting. Just watch that in yourself as you are tempted to troll about how fat I am or how much I look like or whatever. That out of the way, this is going to be a short video. It's just something that I've been thinking of and waiting to see if it would appear anywhere. The fact that I think, and I'm no lawyer, I'm no attorney, so if there is one in the house of the tens of thousands of people watching this, tell me, is this silly to think that there's a lawsuit here? I saw in France that a Michael Jackson fan contingent is suing for like mental distress, which I thought was silly. Like, what judge is gonna hear that? Well, in America, they wouldn't, but apparently in France, these fans have done this before and won. So that's interesting. But in America, I don't think we could get away with such a thing. So I think you would need a real lawsuit to stop this Leaving Neverland thing from going much further. And the lawsuit, I think that the lawyers for the, Michael Jackson, whatever the business entity is, they're suing for a breach of a 1990s contract with HBO, but I think that's going to go nowhere. That's just my personal feeling. I think that's a shot in the dark. And I think, we've heard rumors of the family like suing for mental distress. And that might also be a shot in the dark if that's even true. It looks like it might not be. But what is true is what my friend wrote to me that I had shared with you, the text messages of my friend's review of this movie. And I don't remember if he said it in the text or just when we talked on the phone, but at some point he told me that he had to turn it off because once he realized that Jimmy Safechuck and Wade Robson were lying, or at least that's his opinion, he realized he's essentially watching child pornography. And so he had to turn it off because gross. And I even made a joke in one of the comments or something to a troll who was calling me a pedo and saying, but you're the one who's watching the pedophile porn, not me. I'm the one speaking out against it. And there's a truth to that, isn't there? So the truth is that, well, let's put it this way. I think there's a lawsuit, and I think you would sue Q Media, HBO, Oprah Winfrey, Dan Reed, Wade Robson, Jimmy Safechuck, and any other entities that are promoting and distributing essentially child pornography. I mean, our argument is that Michael Jackson didn't do this, right? And so from that standard, having 2 men talk in great, gory, graphic detail about what happened to them as children as a work of fiction is in fact pornography, child pornography. The best case scenario for the filmmakers is to be able to get away with saying, well, we can't know what happened in the bedroom, therefore this is a documentary about their truth, whatever that means. It means nothing. So they can hide behind that it's a documentary, if in fact it's a documentary, you see? But as we've discussed in the previous 4 episodes of this, it's not a documentary that is documenting facts, it is an emotive documentary. It is trying to get you to feel something. And I suppose you could say it's trying to get you to feel disgust, But actually, it's just trying to get you to feel motivated to tell your friends to watch, because it's not just television, it's HBO. Ting! You remember that? So I think there's a class action lawsuit here. I think this could fall under child pornography that HBO has been showing, that Q Media distributed, that Oprah Winfrey and everyone else involved have promoted, that Dan Reed and Jimmy and Wade made. And Oprah Winfrey, I mean, the reason that I would include her is because, you know, her rhetoric about, well, I'm just, I'm seizing the moment of the Me Too movement and of our interest in child molestation to really hone in on this because it's an important issue. Maybe, but it takes a long time, right? It takes like all kinds of scheduling and stuff to produce an Oprah Winfrey show, an Oprah Winfrey, her after the Leaving Neverland special. It takes a while to coordinate all that and put it together and give it money. All of that takes time. So at what point, I guess you would need to find out in discovery, like at what point did they decide to do that? Was it after Leaving Neverland came out at Sundance and was super popular? Because that's what created the moment for us to want to talk about child molestation. Before that, no one was talking about child molestation. Weren't even talking about like Leaving Neverland as an important thing or anything that would go anywhere up until maybe, you know, the week or so before Sundance. And it premiered on HBO shortly thereafter, right? So you would think that actually Oprah was in on the creation of Leaving Neverland as an important document for her to do this with, which means that they had to create the buzz, essentially. Oprah, HBO, all of them, they had to create the buzz before there was a buzz. She wasn't attaching herself to a preordained buzz, in other words. They made the buzz about child molestation through this movie, and then she claims that they were, no, not doing that, but just saw the buzz, and they were like, ooh, we can seize the day here. I don't think that's how it works, but you could find that in Discovery. Also, and I'm sorry, I'm in a place right now that has no internet as I'm recording this, but I've read, and I haven't been able to confirm, so maybe someone else out there can, that the two, we talked about the one woman who was in charge of HBO documentaries, and in charge, essentially, of changing the focus of how documentaries are made to these emotive documentaries as the new marketable thing. Well, I believe she left the company and two women took over in 2017, and one of those two women, I think, I've read, I have not confirmed, but you can do this, you can confirm this probably faster than I will, that one of those two is on the board of whatever, directors, for the Sundance Film Festival. And if that's true, then what this really means is that, let's take Dan Reed at his word. He talked to a producer from Channel 4 in the UK, and the producer was like, I know what your next big project should be. There's this question about Michael Jackson. Really what that conversation is, listen, you make this. HBO and Channel 4 apparently ended up co-producing it. So you do this, we'll kick in the funds, you'll get it on Channel 4 and HBO. Once it does a run at Sundance, you'll get into Sundance. I mean, all of this stuff is preordained, right? It's like there's a machination here of you do this and we will make this flow. So in other words, there was never any question. Dan Reed wasn't going out on a limb making this. There was no question that if he made this film, he would get it produced. He would get it mass marketed. You see? It's all of a machination. It's like a pipeline. And so we already know that HBO has blatantly said and is proud of the fact that they've changed the way documentaries are made to be emotive. We know that Q Media has put out in their press releases how thrilled they were to distribute Leaving Neverland, an emotive documentary. So we know that this is an emotive documentary made by emotive HBO for emotive HBO, and that Sundance in some way is a formality, is a way to have a press release about standing ovations and things like this. Because it was never not going to go to HBO. In other words, Sundance is used as a promotional gimmick, because if somebody is working for HBO and Sundance and they're able to just get whatever film they want in, Sundance is effectively a marketing tool for something that is already preordained to go to HBO and Channel 4 in the UK. I'm probably not saying this well, but I hope you're following this. So all of this rigmarole, plus Oprah Winfrey's stamp of approval, which I am saying, to my mind, must have come earlier in the process, her agreeing to do this, than what she's saying her reasons are would imply. And all of this is in emails and paperwork and stuff, and you can figure all of this out. So I think that there's a class action lawsuit from HBO subscribers, which I am not one. I have not seen the film, and I'm not a subscriber. So I can't do this, but someone out there can. At least look into it. You, as a subscriber of HBO, were conned into watching child pornography that claimed to be a documentary about, we don't even know. I mean, what it is about is that Michael Jackson's guilty and he did it to these two kids. What they're claiming it's about is, it's not about Michael Jackson at all. It's about these survivors, and/or it's a look into how victimizers groom children. Has nothing to do with Michael Jackson. None of it makes sense, right? But what we do know that you watched is two men narrating in graphic detail child pornography. And if it were for the greater good, then they would not be afraid to say it was about Michael Jackson. But in order to make it about Michael Jackson, in order to say that, they would have to present two sides, or more than two sides. They would have to put in evidence that actually calls attention to the fact that their timeline doesn't quite work out the way the narrative wants you to believe it does. We know all of this now, right? So I think this is a have your cake and eat it too moment. I think there's a class action lawsuit on behalf of HBO subscribers that gets this film shelved forever, but also makes those making documentaries have to question whether they're going to make emotive documentaries, or whether they're at least going to label them and not do this shell game where they're pretending it's factual, they're pretending it's about what it's not really about, because, no. What the hell is this movie for? It's to get Michael Jackson, and you know that the more you see Dan Reed in interviews, and the more frustrated he gets with being questioned. The more he calls Michael Jackson fans the Islamic State of fandom, or whatever it is. I mean, he cannot stand being scrutinized. And isn't that ironic? I don't know, is it, or is it typical? I'm not sure. It's one of the two. It's either atypical or typical. I don't know. But, right. Maybe some of you are right, I am a moron. Okay, so that's it. I'm just throwing that out there, and if there are attorneys who can whittle this down into its finer details and make a case, great. I have read, and again, I'm sorry I don't have my internet here to see what the names are, but there was a case a few years ago that I read in the New York Times of a child porn book author, so just words in a book author, who was sued. And the jury, it said in the New York Times, after reading 2 pages of this garbage to the jury, they told whoever was reading it to please stop reading it. And they gave this guy 10 years in prison. So this is actually, I would think, more graphic and more assaulting to the senses, and actually reaching more people than something that is a child pedo book that is written for pedophiles, right? This is something that is not marketed toward pedophiles. This is marketed as anti-pedophilia. But really, if it's an emotive so-called documentary that is geared to make you feel, then that is why it is as graphic as possible. It's not as graphic as possible because we need to see that to understand pedophilia or any of that. It's as graphic as possible so that it gets inside you and you want to act. Of course, you want to act out against Michael Jackson because now you think he's guilty. But they're saying that's not what this is about. So if they don't know what it's about, and you don't know what it's about, then all it's about, at the end of the day, is using child porn dialogue to make you feel. That's all we can say it's about. And isn't that child pornography?